treat you like you're just a person who came in and is a regular patient, not a person who's a drug addict, not a person who's made bad decisions in your past life.
They don't make you feel like you are a bad person for having to take the medication that you're taking for maybe the length of time that you have to take it. They will tell you, it's all about how you feel, and when you're ready and you want to come off of it, we will work that schedule, we will do that.
They offer abundance of counseling, and they always offer to go above and beyond whatever you need in your recovery process.
It's like walking into Cheers. That's the best way to explain it. Everybody here knows your name. They know who you are, what you're about, everything. So, and it makes it very easy to be honest with everybody. So if I ever had a mess up, I was able to be honest and tell them.
The counseling here helps you talk about anything you may be struggling with. The employees here have always been great to me. They take care of me, and I recommend the program to anyone.
If you feel that you are wanting to take that step to better yourself and have the things that you want in life and do the things that you want, make a phone call to BHG. It will definitely change your life. It for sure changed mine.
Hello, everyone. I have already had a technical issue, so if I get kicked out again, we're just going to roll with it. My name is Lee Taylor, and on behalf of our co-conveners, Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental and Intellectual Disabilities, and Mental Health America of Kentucky, I just want to welcome you to the System of Care Academy. It is our 10th anniversary, and we are super excited to have all of our presenters this year. I have 2 quick slides to share before we'll move into our introductions. Our session today is in Zoom webinar. That means that all attendees are muted and your videos are off. We are recording the session and we'll have that video available soon. If you do not see an interpreter on the screen, please put that in chat box so that we can make a fix. Please also use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen for any questions for our presenter. We should have time at the end for some questions and answers. The American Sign Language interpreter should be on screen throughout the webinar, so you should see our presenter, our interpreter, and the PowerPoint. We are using auto captioning, and if you do not see that, you should be able to click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Continuing education and certificates of attendance. You must be in the content portion of the webinar for at least 90% of the session to be eligible for a certificate. This is a mandate by the boards, and we cannot provide partial credit. You are not required to sign in via the chat. Zoom captured your sign-in when you entered your email address to enter. That email address is the unique identifier used to track attendance for certificates. So you must use the same email address when registering for and entering each session. Within 2 weeks, attendees who are present for at least 90% of the session will receive an email from me with a session evaluation link. When you complete that evaluation, it'll immediately go to your certificate. From that page, you can either save or print your certificate. Academy staff do not mail, do not email, any of those. You can always do it yourself. That link that I will send you will stay live, so you can return to the website at any time to save it again or to print it. You can access certificates from 2019 through 2024, so I recommend bookmarking that link. And now I'm going to turn it over to the Executive Director of Mental Health America of Kentucky for the rest of our introductions.
Hello, I'm Marcy Timmerman. I am the Executive Director at MHAKY. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the Honorable Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren. She's the pioneer of America's first mental health court in Broward County, 17th Judicial Circuit Court in Florida. Judge Wren has served the Broward County Mental Health Court for 27 years, 1 month, and has been on the bench in the circuit for 27 years, 6 months. So mental health court happened just after she began her time. She has a history of working with protection and advocacy of folks with severe mental illness. So she came to the court with knowledge of severe mental illness that I'm sure you'll hear about today. She also is a former public guardian in Florida. So she's had a couple of roles in the system and kind of saw it from more of a systems perspective. We are very proud at MHA Kentucky to call her a friend of decriminalization across the country. We are not alone in that. Her kudos come from NAMI, from other major national groups, including judicial groups across the country. And so it's my pleasure to go ahead and hand it over to Judge Lerner-Wren, sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I can't really tell you what a joy and honor it is to be here presenting on behalf of what I consider to be part of, and that is Team Kentucky for the 2024 System of Care Academy. I'd like to personally thank my dear friend Marcy, Robin, the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental and Intellectual Disabilities, and Mental Health America of Kentucky, and all the affiliates across Kentucky for including me in this System of Care Academy, which I can't think of anything, quite frankly, that's as important. A little story just to kind of illustrate my depth of my relationship with Team Kentucky, but I was very, very fortunate during my book tour. I am an author. I guess I should back up and just tell you maybe a little bit, add a little bit more background. I am also an author of a book, and I'll just hold it up. This is not a not a sale pitch at all, but A Court of Refuge, Stories from the Bench of America's First Mental Health Court, that was published in 2018 by Beacon Press. That brought me over to Owensboro. And it was there that I was so fortunate not only to meet our now relatively new appeals court judge, Lisa Payne Jones, but I was also invited during that swing to meet with a whole number of Owensboro community stakeholders and advocates. They were very interested in consulting with regards to, okay, what did Broward do? What do you think we should do here in Owensboro? Do you have any suggestions for us? We had an extraordinary luncheon meeting. I think, if memory serves me right, it was at a beautiful restaurant at the Miller House. And you know, I've been doing this work a very, very long time. Broward's mental health court, as Marcy was indicating, has so many notable, honors. We were honored at the White House Conference on Mental Health, the first one in the United States in 1999. We were the model for the Law Enforcement and Mental Health Project, which is really out of legislation out of Ohio to pilot 100 mental health courts and other diversionary strategies for persons with mental illnesses across the United States. And that was signed into law by President Clinton. It was a unanimous vote in Congress in 2000. Also honored to have been appointed by President George W. Bush, to serve on the President's New Freedom Commission on Mental Health. That was the second presidential commission on mental health in the United States in 2002 and 2003, where I was chair of the subcommittee for criminal justice. And just also because we're so proud, our community is so proud. But in 2013, we were nominated top finalists for Innovating Justice Awards at The Hague, for the Hill Foundation in the Netherlands, for our innovative social justice work, and also honored by National Council at the time that was its name in 2015, for excellence in advocacy for elected service. And I think that there's nothing more important, in my view, than crossing that chasm, if you will, from criminalization to really developing the capacity of our systems of care to overcome stigma, to eliminate discrimination, and to really focus on these strategies, if you will, which promote access to care, reduce disparities, and obviously promote what I would call, in our view, human rights, therapeutic justice, and wellness. So I'm just going, my plan this afternoon, quite frankly, is I'm going to take us through the PowerPoints, focus a little bit more on some of the key areas that I wanted to concentrate on, because I know that from Mental Health America, you are all keenly aware of not only the early history of the criminalization of persons with mental illness, but also what got us here. I'm also, I should say, I'm sorry, I'm a 17-year professor in graduate studies, also adjunct online at Nova Southeastern University, where I've been teaching basically how to lead cultural and social change for mental health and basically, overcome this criminalization trend. So I think as I start my PowerPoints, and again, we're going to be taking questions at the end, I think everyone is aware, obviously, that, our U.S. jails and prisons serve as our nation's largest de facto psychiatric hospitals. As I speak here today, no matter how wonderful these diversionary strategies and restorative justice models have been, still we have an estimated 388,000 persons, men and women, juveniles that are not included in that figure, with serious mental illness and other cognitive disabilities, neurocognitive disabilities, and co-occurring disorders behind bars in U.S. jails and prisons. According to the American Psychological Association, 64% of incarcerated individuals are in U.S. jails, and 54% in federal and other prison settings. And we know that the prevalence of co-occurring disorders is rampant among incarcerated individuals. And we certainly understand the consequences of incarceration, not only to individuals, but to families and communities. We all had such hope. Even when I was, younger, hearing and learning about the vision of President John F. Kennedy and his roadmap, extraordinary roadmap for the Community Mental Health Act of 1963, and recognized that 30 days after signing that legislation, tragically, President Kennedy was assassinated. Unfortunately, there was a vacuum in leadership on the executive level. A lot of conflict in terms of vying for finances during the Vietnam War. And sadly, the momentum for implementation of the Mental Health Act for community-based care lost its way. The assassination changed the course of the Community Mental Health Act. And we also know at the same time, many states closed or downsized existing state psychiatric hospitals. Many of these institutions, which were antiquated, dangerous, lacked any real treatment milieu, and were deemed fire hazards. So how did Broward County, of all places, I think, really come to be a leader and pioneering county, for this effort. So I'll take you back in time. I was not on the bench. As Marcy indicated, I was working for the state of Florida's protection and advocacy system. I am and was a PAMI lawyer. And back in the early 70s, there was a federal class action over our state regional psychiatric hospital in the state of Florida. Broward County was just one of the many catchment areas, and this federal class action that was brought by what is now known as Disability Rights Florida. Back then, it was the Advocacy Center for Persons with Disabilities, got to the point in the litigation in the early 90s where they were ready to reach a consent decree. Really similar, very similar in nature to a settlement agreement. And there was a concept by the plaintiffs in the case, the P&A, that they really wanted to have a plaintiff's monitor overseeing the implementation of that federal class action on the ground, if you will, and also to represent the patients within the hospital from a PAMI dynamic. So I went to a mental health forum at the time. As Marcy said, I was acting as the public guardian for the 17th Judicial Circuit. And what that really was a position within the probate court where we had adults that had no family that could serve as a legal guardian and were deemed incapacitated by the probate court because of any kind of disabilities, and they didn't have anyone to care for them. They would be assigned to the Office of Public Guardian, where I was directing, and I had a number of amazing case managers as well as support staff, and it would be my role to oversee their health, their safety, and their welfare. And it was during a speech that I gave that at the time when the state hospital was being threatened with closure, largely, I think, over this pending lawsuit, that I was looked at as the right person, if you will, to fulfill that plaintiff's monitor position. I had left the Office of Public Guardian in the early 90s to take that role, really recognizing that we didn't seem to have any workable mental health system in Broward County. And for those who don't know where Broward County is, I'm at my courthouse is in Fort Lauderdale. We sit about 30, 40 minutes north of Miami, and we have a very, very large county population. And at the time that I went into work with this federal class action, there was a grand jury investigation that had been implemented to study Broward County's system of care, not only for adults, but juveniles across all of the sectors. And in November 4th of 1994, that grand jury issued a scathing 153-page report, essentially finding that there was no one accountable for anything, and that our county-wide mental health, behavioral health system of care, back then we largely called it mental health, not so much integrating the substance use piece, but called our entire system of care basically deplorable. And at that point, and I think it's interesting to note that the Broward's Mental Health Court was in fact an outgrowth of that grand jury investigation. But really, I think that the leading drive for a mental health court actually was based on the story on what happened to one young man by the name of Lerner-Wren. and I held up a court of refuge. I'm going to refer to it one more time. And a court of refuge, the book was actually dedicated to Aaron Wynn and his family. And the ironic thing about Aaron Wynn, as I go through briefly telling you this story, is that he wasn't mentally ill. He was 18 years old, getting ready to go to college, when he suffered a very serious motorcycle accident in the mid 80s. And he suffered very severe traumatic brain injury and other injuries. His family didn't even think he was going to survive. He did. And his family, a middle-class family, did everything they could to try to get services, rehabilitation. They could find nothing. To make a long story short, he wasn't able to regulate his emotions, and he got into an argument with a law enforcement officer and was arrested. He was found incompetent to proceed by a circuit court judge in Broward County and sent to a Florida State forensic hospital, where essentially he was kept in solitary confinement in 4 and 5 point restraints for essentially a year and a half. When he got discharged from that state hospital, obviously you could imagine he was much sicker than he was when he was admitted. He had no discharge plan. His family had no notice he was returning. They didn't have adequate housing, no resources for him. And ultimately what happened is he went into a very large grocery store, very popular in our state, had some kind of a panic attack at the cash register, dashed out of the store, collided with an 85-year-old woman. She falls to the pavement and dies of her head injuries she sustained. And now Aaron Wynn is charged with murder. It was his public defender at the time, Howard Finkelstein, since retired, but a highly charismatic lawyer, who initiated the state grand jury investigation and came to understand that while he always believed that getting his clientele, out of jail, as swiftly as possible, wasn't really helping them, because all it was really doing was, generating a revolving door out to the streets, into the jails, into the hospital. I think we all get that. And it was his vision then that we have to do something. And that's something that they did. And you'll see in the PowerPoint, I list where it says, the caption is "Leaders in Broward's Criminal Justice and Behavioral Health System Take a Stand," creating a task force, bringing these two parallel systems now together on a very high level of leaders in our community and policymakers to this task force, really changed, if you will, the trajectory of what was happening in Broward County. Because in our jails, we recognized that there was overcrowding, that there were a number of suicides, again, that the revolving door, was so prevalent, and that people and families just didn't know what to do. There just wasn't really any help for these families in the community. And essentially, finally, which makes, I think, the work of Kentucky so incredibly strong. It took our task force, for example, over 2.5 years. I wasn't on the task force. I was over at the state hospital. But it took over 2.5 years for this coalition to decide on how do they want to proceed, what kind of strategy or innovation would they like to see. And finally, in a moment of frustration, the chair of the task force, a circuit court judge by the name of Judge Spicer, Mark Spicer, looked at Howard Finkelstein and said, "What is it that you want?" and thinking about the drug court model in Miami-Dade that had been established in 1989, said, I just want my own special court. And so in that moment, I was just coming on to the bench as a county court judge. Hadn't been to any of those task force meetings while working at the state hospital, but I did have specialized knowledge in mental health. I was specially trained by national experts across all paradigms of mental health, including psychiatric rehabilitation, through the University of Boston Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation Models, by consumer leaders in civil rights, on pharmacology, on discharge planning. Just in all of these facets, I had leaders in the consumer movement and so forth, and experts in systems training me to prepare myself to oversee this federal class action consent decree. So as I guess irony or synchronicity, which I believe in very strongly, would have it, they knew the task force knew I was coming, and they thought that I was going to be a perfect fit, if you will, for the court. And I think, not being self-aggrandizing, but I do think I was prepared and ready because of the relationships that I built from case managers and mental health providers across the entire county, and advocates, that I can lead this effort. I can design a court based on our lived experience as a community, on behalf of Lerner-Wren. And if you go to the PowerPoint that I did, you'll actually see that PBS Frontline describes Lerner-Wren in their series at the time in 2005 in the new asylums. They describe Lerner-Wren as the unlikely savior of a new system of justice for persons for serious mental illness. That's how they coined it. Everything in the PowerPoint, all of my references, I believe, are hyperlinked. So if you grab a copy of that, you can go back and look at that amazing series by Frontline. The Lerner-Wren's experience and my personal philosophies with regards to therapeutic jurisprudence, and my absolute outrage, if you will, to take a stand, the need, I guess is the word, to take a stand against the criminalization of persons with mental illness and all other forms of disabilities, just was so powerful. And I've always had, a real passion for civil rights work when I was young. So I remember as soon as I got the call from the chief judge of our circuit, the 17th Circuit in Broward County, the phone call came, as Marcy was saying, about 4 months into my judgeship. I had never done a criminal case in my life, but they put me in the county court criminal division on purpose because they knew that they needed my knowledge base to not only develop the design of this court, but to oversee the court. And so understanding, if you will, not only what happened now to Lerner-Wren, but if you look at a more global level from a mental health care dynamic, I think it's really important to know that mental health care law is grounded in human rights. And so to tell the story of Broward's mental health court, the communication, I think was critical. And we deemed the mental health court, coined the mental health court a human rights effort. And all of the values, the structure, how court operates, what happens in terms if there's non-compliance, issues like that, all fall, for example, under a human rights umbrella. And what does that mean? It means, for example, I knew that the court had to be voluntary. I knew that everyone had to be represented by counsel so that they could really understand, by an informed consent dynamic, what this specialized court is, whether they would like to participate or not participate. And if someone was too gravely or acutely ill at the time, I can still divert them. But when they returned to the court, then they would make a choice. Again, no one ever lost their rights, their civil and constitutional rights that they have under law, not only to go to trial, but to exercise all fundamental and due process rights. It was also really important for me, understanding and learning about therapeutic jurisprudence, the science, the concept of TJ. Many of you, I know, are aware of it. It's been around a long time. It was implemented in the first drug court. The theory comes out of the University of Miami with the collaboration of Professor David Wexler, who was at the University of Miami at the time with Professor Bruce Winnick, and he was visiting his mother in Miami Beach, and these two amazing scholars got together and did what scholars do as law professors. They were in the mental health space. They started reading legal opinions about civil commitment and really came to the view that it didn't look like, people, those that were being petitioned had any voice in the process. That it seemed and appeared by what they read that these proceedings were very one-sided, and in their context of a TJ dynamic, that these were anti-therapeutic types of proceedings. And their concept then asked the question, well, if legal and administrative proceedings, for example, could be anti-therapeutic, is it possible then that we, legal actors, judges, lawyers, probation officers, even clinicians, those working in the courtroom, lawyers, can we promote a more therapeutic approach to the law? And the larger question that they asked or theorized is, can the law act as a therapeutic agent? Or can courts act as a therapeutic agent? And I think that the answer after 27 years is a resounding yes. That if judges are willing, if there are judges that are empathic and understanding of this plight and how important it is to create a successful diversionary strategies where people feel empowered to participate, understanding that we're on their side, if you will, in terms of reaching and maintaining and achieving recovery so they could have a good life and live their best dreams, then, that was really what we wanted to create. Meaning, so every communication needs to reflect those values. A communication for everybody, language being so fundamental in the court. And that our goal to promote access to care, to have community buy-in, that we gained through what I call just a courageous community. We didn't have any grants, and we were really asking a very heavy lift for, community providers that really were already, underfunded. Florida is the third largest state in the United States, for example, and one of 10 states with no Medicaid expansion. Many presentations I would go in, and Debbie from MHA knows this so well. I'd, hold up, 4 or 5, grand lattes, and say, this is what we get per diem, per capita rather, for persons with mental illness in the state of Florida. I mean, it was ridiculous. So to ask providers if they would kind of realign their systems, so now they will serve people in the mental health court without any additional funding, was a very big ask. But with strong leadership and really creating that sense of urgency, we were able to create that kind of sense of urgency and need for their collaboration. And again, I'm so proud of our community. They deserve so much credit across so many years and in so many ways that our system has grown. We were one of the models for the Stepping Up initiative by NACO. They came to see us in 2009. I think that we really understand, the sequential intercept mapping process so well that we really I think it's time to really lead cultural change and systemic change, upstream. And I'll get to that in just a couple of minutes, but just to go through a few more to understand that our goal is to promote dignity and create pathways to opportunity. From a guiding principle vantage point, obviously public safety is paramount to everything. The protection and promotion of individual constitutional and civil rights, as I said, paramount. To promote voice, to promote validation, to promote storytelling in the court, essential. Dignity and TJ is the foundation of the court, applying principles of person first, psychiatric rehabilitation, being inclusive, respectful, of course, of human rights, compassionate, trauma informed, solution focused, and procedurally fair, and really understanding all of those interconnections of trauma, of health equity needs, of adverse childhood experiences and disparities, all of those concepts, all of that evidence base, I felt really needed to be integrated as a fundamental part of the court. So immediately we saw the courtroom as a classroom, so that we could have these safe, empathic, and compassionate conversations from an evidence-based vantage point. And I just can't tell you what it's like talking to justice-involved women, for example, about the impact of trauma, the impact of victimization. And then, one thing leads to another. And instead of seeking care and in seeking help, because we know the data on the impact of trauma and victimization in terms of anxiety, depression, PTSD, then all of a sudden you rely on drug use and substance use, and now you've got addictive disorders as well. Having these dialogues in the courtroom, an environment where we're free and comfortable doing that. And then teaching this evidence base like a classroom, I think has been so important, because we really lack an understanding of mental health literacy in this country. And I'll get to that really toward the end also, but the idea of really focusing on that procedural justice piece of the TJ plank. Giving voice, validation, being neutral, being able to promote trust, promoting trust. We care for you. Our only purpose of the court is to be here for you. And that's really, I think, the essence of what happens in the courtroom in terms of giving voice to the individuals more so than even their lawyers. But then, of course, making sure that all of this transportation, using the courtroom, if you will, like a funnel, people coming out of the jail, here they are in court. What if they're too sick to even participate in court? We have to get them out of jail. The goal was to get them to more humane therapeutic treatment environments. And so we needed to engage our sheriff's office, who handles all of our transportation needs, and everybody in the jail system. We all had to work collaboratively in order to make sure that people were getting where they needed to get, and that it would be my job, much like as I did in the state hospital and the federal class action, would be to oversee the appropriateness of the discharge planning. Did it meet the level of care needs of the individual? And if not, then I really needed to advocate. And of course, I think everyone knows me fairly well, that knows me, and that I am not shy about advocacy in any way. And I'm not saying that there's not tensions at times with providers, because of course there is tensions. But our people need what they need. And if they don't get it, then the consequences are steep. Everything from reincarceration, to worse. Not only homelessness, but victimization. And of course, we know the prevalence of suicide. In 2015, from serving on the executive committee of the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention, which I still have the honor of doing, and being on that executive committee, I recognized, as I noticed a news article by the New York Times, that the suicide rate was just rising at the startling rate across every age group. And I happened to be in Albany at the time when that article came out. And I remember at a NARPIS event, and I remember going back on the plane going, I need to do something and make suicide prevention a higher priority in the courtroom, because I don't think I'm focusing on it enough. So I openly declared now Broward's Mental Health Court to be a zero suicide initiative. And what did that mean for me? And what did it mean for the community? It meant that now we talk about suicide and ask about suicide attempts every day, changing that narrative. So we can talk freely about suicide, make sure people understand and know about 988, other crisis response. In Broward, we have 211 Broward, and really making sure that there's family resource guides that could swiftly connect family members to 988, or our mobile crisis teams through Henderson Behavioral Health Center, our largest behavioral health center in Broward County. And I feel that, I think that from a strategic vantage point, from a system of care vantage point, we have made extraordinary progress since that 1994 grand jury investigation. Our collaborative relationships are strong. Our hearts are all in the same place in terms of elimination of discrimination, stigma, and moving to create a system of care where everybody could have access to care. That families understand the need for early intervention and prevention, and that the schools are equipped as well in terms of post-COVID dynamics with regards to issues of social media, bullying, and all of the struggles that our children, teens, and youth are having. And of course, and all dealing with all of the racial and other and financial disparities. We've come very far, I think, together, but we've got a long way to go, which is why I'm so pleased to be here supporting Team Kentucky and supporting the rest of our nation and the world in terms of leading change, because there's no reason why mental health should not be considered on the same level, in the same way as any other general health. And with that, I think what I'll do is I'm going to stop, take any questions, or if I need clarification or anything else, or somebody just wants to comment, I'm happy to take questions.
Well, first of all, thank you for that wonderful recap. And folks, yes, please add your questions to the Q&A, or if you can't reach that, use the chat. We understand. This is Marcy Timmerman again, for those of you. I did drop some links in the chat for things. You mentioned TJ. I realize that some of our attendees probably aren't as familiar with therapeutic jurisprudence, so I put that definition in there for them. Didn't know if you wanted to kind of give a little snippet about what it is and what you're talking about with that.
I will. Let me expand on therapeutic jurisprudence, and let me slow that down a little bit, because I have to tell you something. I didn't understand it either. And it took me a number of reads. If you'd like to, Marcy, it would be great if you put in a site to the Fordham. Let me just, if I could get my site, give me 1 second. It's a law, it is a law review article, but I don't want you to get, if you're not, if you're not a lawyer, don't be afraid of it. It's not heavy in case law. It's not one of those kind of articles. This was actually a symposium that was reduced to a law review. And that symposium was held at Fordham.
I found it.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
Oh,
It's
fantastic.
the Therapeutic Jurisprudence and Problem-Solving Courts by Bruce.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Just making sure I have the right one.
Yes, I consider that one of the best, still, though it was published in 2003, still one of the greatest primers on therapeutic jurisprudence and problem-solving courts. And that's what I tell my students.
Yep.
So don't be afraid of that in any way, shape, or form, to dig into that. And so again, the idea that legal or administrative processes could have a therapeutic approach, which obviously is a positive one, more positive, or an anti-therapeutic approach. So for example, and it's so funny because once I sit on the board of directors of the International Society for Therapeutic Jurisprudence, which is open to everyone. Every discipline, no matter what you're in, if you get interested in TJ and Hook like me, I think the membership is like $25. Every other year, there's conferences internationally. This one is in Barcelona, but you get to publish if you want. You get to read incredible publications on our site, and of amazing scholars and practitioners from every discipline, nurses, educators, anything. And it's wonderful. So again, Marcy, the idea that if we're asking the question, which I think I've always started with the question, I've got a tremendous amount of writings online. You can just go to Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren, Therapeutic Jurisprudence. I've written many contributing blogs to Huffington Post over the years, and then on Medium about TJ. It really is just a whole, I guess, reimagined way of implementing court process. We're not changing laws. We're not following the law, but it's how we're behaving in the court and how we're communicating in the court and what our goals are in these problem-solving courts. And if the goal is to humanize court process, how do we do that? Oh, I'll see somebody in the, in the courtroom, let's call her, Mrs. Smith. Ms. Smith, how are you doing today? I want you to know that this court is here for you. And how can we help you? And we start with that. And, I think that, we use a lot of our intuition. What do people need to hear, right? Maybe it's just listening. And as you listen, you start to think, well, wait a minute, this person sounds like they've had a really, really tough life. Why don't we just acknowledge that, right? Why don't we share some evidence based on the impact of adverse childhood experiences and talk about that and say, hey, did you have any of these events in your life? And if you did, it's not surprising that you may be struggling a little bit, right? And so, how can we help? Asking them so they can be engaged in the problem solving as well. So I think if you read the forum law review that we have up, read a couple of my articles and then think about, just, how I'm, kind of providing this overview, given the values I've described and the goals of the court. I think you'll really understand that we're trying to create a court process which is inviting, which is inspiring, which is facilitative, where people really feel, wait a minute, I think this judge is onto something. And we've gone through a series of formal evaluations early on in the court, not only to evaluate whether or not this court was coercive. That was one of the first concerns. When the court doors burst open, we never thought that it hadn't been done before. We just never thought about it. And then all these delegations poured in from around. But what the experts in policy were concerned about is, what is she doing? Is it therapeutic? Is it anti-therapeutic? Is it coercive? So that issue was studied. The results of that evaluation that was done by the Gaines Center, together with funded by the MacArthur Foundation, led by Professor John Monahan from the University of Virginia, was incredible. That their experience in this court was better than having an experience in a court of general jurisdiction. And the comment was, when I heard them release this data, that the input from people being in Judge Wren's court was like they were going out for an ice cream sundae. And I'm only saying that not to go like this, but to give you a sense of what you want it to be, what we want it to be in the field, for people that are doing these types of courts. Why? Because it's not a crime to have a mental illness, because people are only getting, criminalized because we don't have accessible and well-capacitated systems of care. And that's what we have to fix. That's on us. That's on all of us, including, we must get our policy.
Thanks for pointing that out too. Yeah, we always mention, I love mental health court, but I would love for it not to need to exist, right? Yeah, I'm sure you would too, because we don't
Well,
want
that's
to
my
have to
line.
have a criminal charge.
You stole my line, Marcy.
Sorry.
Because people would go, well, what is your greatest wish?
Mhm.
And that's what I've always said, that we don't need one. And if you go to the Mental Health America policies, and you go to, I think it's policy 53 or 59, you'll see I'm quoted by Mental Health America in terms of that very dynamic, that the criminal justice system, the juvenile justice system, even the foster care system, if you want to look at it more broadly, that's the back door. That's a back door. The back door can't fix the front door. And so we really, I think this academy, I think could actually propel us to a new place.
Mhm.
I think where we really need to.
I'm going to ask you this one because I think it's really interesting. I don't think I've heard you ask this one. Do you think therapeutic jurisprudence and racial justice work can go hand in hand? Erica, I assume RJ is a racial justice. Let me know if it's not what you're
Oh,
thinking.
without question.
Yeah.
You know, you can't have therapeutic jurisprudence if you're not acknowledging racial injustice. They're integrated because who are we serving? I think we know who our populations are. You know, they're people with great disparity, and who are also, experiencing significant racial injustice and everything that comes with it. You know, in terms of the of being justice involved, right? So yes, the answer is an affirmative yes.
And I was wrong, but it's similar. Restorative justice, not quite the same, but
Very similar.
yeah,
Very
sisters, I would
similar,
say, and hand in hand in a lot of ways.
of course,
Yeah.
but different
Um,
models. Yeah.
yeah. Another question. I'm going to move up to an older question just because it's here first. How do you reach critical mass in the community to make this happen? Like, is there a magic formula? I think is kind of what it's asking. They want to know,
Yeah.
system
I
level
mean, I
change. How
think
do you do it? Right?
sure. Well, I
Good
would,
question.
I think it's the perfect question because we're running out of time and I knew I talked too much. So if you go to the PowerPoint, you will see a discussion, a reference to John Cotter leading change model.
Yep.
You follow that
We'll
model.
make sure you all get that PowerPoint. So do not
You
fret
follow
or worry
that
about that.
model, the John Cotter leading change model. I actually, I have a leadership thread in my course, and I include that. So if my students, I teach a doctoral class in criminal justice, a master's class, I develop the course in forensic psychology. You know how to lead. But I know that Team Kentucky knows how to lead.
Oh yeah. We
I
just
don't
got
have
some
any
more
doubt
funding.
about that.
So yep, we just got
Yeah.
a little more funding for mental health court expansion. So slowly but surely that polite persistence is working.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think that community buy-in, is everything. And, I talked about moving upstream. I'm leading a new initiative in Broward County, through the United Way of Broward County, for mental health literacy. And I really think it's incredibly important that we really start focusing on making sure from maternal health forward, and family health forward, that we really understand social determinants, that we, from a policy vantage point, we start investing in the preventative dynamics. And I think when we do that, we're going to see that these costs that are going nowhere, they're just wasted costs of revolving in and out of jails and hospitals, don't have to be.
We have one more question if we've got time. I think we do.
Sure.
Somebody was curious about how therapeutic jurisprudence has maybe changed law school or required law school curriculum. Has it made an
We're
impact?
getting there. Great question. I never even learned about therapeutic jurisprudence in law school. I didn't even learn about criminalization of persons with mental illness in law school. So yeah, we need more TJ cheerleaders, in law schools to write about it. But I think the first law school law review in Nova that I wrote was on TJ. So I mean, everything we can do, to promote TJ in law school, but I promote it everywhere. Hospital settings, right? Social workers,
Yeah.
everybody has the ability to be a therapeutic agent in what they do.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this excellent presentation. We really appreciate you. Folks, just a reminder in the chat, evaluation certificate will be sent within 2 weeks. Those present for 90% or more will receive your CEU. Thank you again.
Thank
Judge
you
Wren.
so much. Great spending time with you. Thanks to all my dear friends, and I'll see you online.
Hope you're seeing all the kudos in the chat. They're in love with you.
Thanks, Marcy. Bye-bye now.